Hello, hello, and welcome back to the It's Atlantis channel. Today I have Jessica with me. Jessica you were the first person and like the deepest person that I connected with
Mm,
when we went through the pause breathwork training together. And I'm so grateful
yeah.
for the time that we spent together. Jessica and we would meet up every Wednesday morning. It was early for both of us, 6 a.m. for me, 8 for Jessica.
Somehow it was
And
always earlier for me than it was for you.
yeah. Yep. But I cherished that hour that we would spend together each week. You're just like the most grounded, present person that I have the pleasure of being connected to.
Mm, thank
Mm,
you.
you're
I
welcome.
received that compliment, and yeah, I really looked forward to those Wednesday morning calls, just knowing that I had some Dakota time to drop in. That was such a beautiful way to start my morning. Like,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. Yeah. So welcome to the show. I am so excited to
Mm,
have you here today.
thank you. I'm so excited to finally be here.
Yeah. And Jessica has such a cool, unique and timely story to tell us. She is Jewish, and you were in Israel the weekend of, it was like October 6, 7, 8, 9, I can't remember,
Yeah.
around there. You were there when crap hit the fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, October 7th, man.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I was in Israel with my family for the holiday Sukkot. It's one of the Jewish holidays where we Simchat Torah, actually, it was specifically that day where we celebrate receiving of the Torah. And in not surprising Hamas fashion, they like to plan attacks on days of when it's unsuspected. And so it was both the Sabbath and a holiday. So I guess it was the perfect jackpot for them.
yeah.
And I was with my family in a neighborhood called Netanya. So it's more towards central Israel. So farther from the south where the war first broke out. Um, And interestingly, normally when we're in Israel, we stay in Jerusalem. But we happen to be staying at a family of friends' place in Netanya. So I'll explain why I mentioned that in a second. But I remember my family was already down in synagogue or temple because it was a holiday. Everyone went, not just the men.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit late. So when I was going downstairs and I was in the elevator, there was a woman who was in there and saw that I was dressed for temple. So she saw that I looked a little bit more observant religiously, and she was not. And so she looked at me and she said, "Just so you know, there's a war that broke out." And I said, "Okay." And I want you to understand that this is not so shocking at first glance to hear in Israel, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There there is it almost feels common sometimes if there's rockets being fired, like that's part of the way of life in Israel. So
Yeah.
while I received that information and was like, oh, it didn't really settle in as to like what was really going on.
Yeah.
And when I got down into the synagogue room, I saw my mom and my sister-in-law, and my mom had tears in her eyes, and she's not such a big crier. And so I was like, oh, what's going on? And my sister-in-law looked at me and she goes, it's really bad. There's rumors of people being kidnapped and taken hostage. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like it was so beyond comprehension of what one could possibly fathom.
Yeah.
There have been soldiers in the past that have been kidnapped, but never like civilians, and never it being this mass thing. And so it was just like I couldn't really compute, but I knew it was bad. And so I remember I started crying and I was just praying. And where we were lucky that because we were in central Israel, like where we were geographically, the rockets from the south, from Gaza, weren't going to reach us where we are.
Yeah.
So without getting into too much detail about the north and where Hezbollah is from Lebanon, that could have reached us. But from what we knew at that point, we were allegedly safe. So eventually
Yeah.
we went back upstairs, and my family is observant. And so we don't use technology on the Sabbath. Um, so obviously, with everything considered, we went upstairs and just quickly like opened up my dad's phone, looked, and kind of saw some general updates, but there wasn't anything major that we needed to be aware of where we were. And we also were like on a high floor, overlooking the beach with like pretty panoramic views. So we were able to hear, like, if there was something going on, we would have looked back. Um, but I basically spent the rest of the day like out on the balcony, and there were just war jets like going overhead back and forth. And towards the end of the day, we started to hear the Iron Dome, which is the Israel's missile defense system, basically meeting rockets in the air. And then started to see a couple of that contact over Tel Aviv in the distance, which is a little bit closer to Gaza. So like that's pretty much like about as far as they can get from the
Yeah.
south, for now anyway.
Yeah.
um so yeah, at the end of the day when I turned my phone on and I opened up Instagram, I shrieked. Like I like shrieked, my heart stopped, and my family was just like, what? And then we started to really see the videos and the content that they were recording because they wanted to broadcast to the world the atrocities that they were committing. So, and then my flight was at 10:30 a.m. the following morning on October 8th. And my Dean and myself, my husband, and our flight, because we were on the Israeli airline El Al, our flight wasn't canceled. We flew out exactly as scheduled. So
Mm.
mind you, the country was still in absolute chaos at that point. My parents left later that night on their scheduled flight, and then my brother and sister-in-law were supposed to be there for the semester, doing a semester abroad, and ended up a few days later coming home when it was just so much uncertainty. But yeah, I guess the main thing I would say on that is there was just complete chaos for at least like really 24 hours, but more than that, like days, because there was so much unknown that was happening. And so yeah, while it was, of course, in hindsight, I can acknowledge that it was a huge blessing to be able to leave, there was this part of me that felt so guilty, that did not want to leave, that did not
Yeah.
want to, that just felt so strongly that I wanted to be there, and just support, and felt like I was like self-abandoning in a way. Yeah. So
Yeah. Thank you
yeah.
for sharing that experience of being there. What's so awesome is that you were able to go back last week,
Yeah.
so the end of December. I would love to hear how that time in between, because you mentioned like that guilt, and like you were self-abandoning, which I haven't personally felt, but like like I feel like I can understand that, like how hard that would be to just leave. And then all of like the trauma and the
Mm,
being in it, like there's the being in it, there's the reflecting back on like those first initial days, and then the uncertainty of the future, but like really you've had to keep living through this.
yeah.
So I'd love to know like what that was like, and then what prompted you to go back to Israel and how that experience was.
Yeah. So oof, it was really hard. Um, for two reasons. The first was we were we were in a war zone. Like that was intense. And you know, there are 13, 15 million Jews in the world. So we are all so interconnected, like really on such a deep
Yeah.
level. And you know, our brothers and sisters were massacred. And within hours, the world was in denial of that. And so, without even any time to mourn, we went into defense mode of having to justify that this actually happened.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to I want to also be really like transparent that we don't like to see ourselves as victims, the Jewish people. And the Israelis are the strongest people that I know, truly. Um, you know, it's I think like a military state. So you have to serve. So everyone in the country serves in one way or another, whether that's actually an active duty in the army, or if for whatever reason you can't, or females have another option to do something called shirut limi, which is volunteer work. So there's, but in some way
Mhm.
you're giving back, you're pouring back into the people. So that's already a differentiator that we don't have here in America. And there's a certain resiliency that Israelis have. Um, I'm not Israeli. I wish I was. Um, but I kind of just want to name that first. So coming back, I felt it very deeply in my body. I felt like one, the pain, the grief of what we just were witnessing unfold before our eyes in the morning, and like the lack, like just not believing it, not being able to fully compute that this was really happening. And I started to put an immense amount of pressure on myself to start showing up and allowing this work to bring healing to my people. And like when I say immense amount of pressure on myself, like the only way that I can explain it, the contraction my body was in was as if I literally had tetany throughout my entire body. Like I don't know how else to explain it, because it was the most intense feeling. And for those who are a little bit unfamiliar with it, tetany is literally this like contraction of the smooth muscles in your body. It can often be in your hands or your feet or your jaw, where it's like can happen a lot of the times during a breathwork session, if it's a more active one. And it can feel very uncomfortable. It is it is uncomfortable. Um, and it can also be energy moving through you. But for me, there was like this intense, I felt like I was carrying the weight of nation on my back. And there was like a little bit of like an ego check that I had to get
Yeah.
with there, that I got to meet with a mentor and be like, let's take a few steps back. Like, this is not all on me to now carry the weight of the nation to like bring this work. But there was this
Yeah.
awareness of like, wow, like I was there when it happened. And I want to be able to really use this work to help people heal and move through and process everything that we're experiencing. Because there is there's the American Jew who's here and feels, for lack of a better word, helpless, and is
Yeah.
doing whatever we can, right? And sending supplies and volunteering and donating and calling our Congress, and so really doing what we can. But there's this like inner feeling of like there's just not enough that you can do. And then there's the um, in Israel, there's 1 degree of separation between everyone. It's a small country. It's about 9 million that live in Israel. So, and there's over 200,000 that are called up that are either in active duty or in reserves. So everyone, most families have someone who is in the army right now serving, or 1 degree away from them does. So
Yeah.
this is something that's like deeply impacting every single person there. So there's that, right? So there are those that are have loved ones that are serving on the front lines right now. And then there are those that were deeply impacted by the trauma, whether they had a loved one that was murdered brutally, brutally on October 7th, or was kidnapped, or might still be kidnapped, or was returned and is now processing the trauma of being kidnapped by a terrorist organization, which includes children, two of which are still being held hostage, babies less than 1 year old, 1 year old, and I believe 2 years old. Like, this is what we're dealing with. And this is so there is this deep desire and knowing that this work, I'm meant to be bringing this work into supporting the healing, the processing, the releasing of the Jewish people right now, those that are deeply impacted by the traumatic experiences that we're moving through. And so going back to that time, that first week, first getting back, I was purging so much emotion. It was very heavy. And I allowed myself to move through it because while I was putting that pressure on myself and I needed to release that, which I did, I also knew that I was purging more than just my own emotion. I knew that there was a lot that
Yeah.
I was holding on to more than just mine. And so then over the past few couple of months after that, the weeks moving on, I was able to create a little bit of that. It really depended on the day, but by not like immersing myself into consuming all of the information, which is critical, um, and by really setting boundaries for myself, both like physically and energetically, I was able to just like pull back a little bit and get back into a place where I could be the space holder for processing all of this. And I mean, if you go back on my Instagram, I did an Instagram live that in those first few days, and I was just hysterical. But that's actually the most watched and most like used breath work that I facilitated, um, which I can come back to, but I feel like it kind of ties in when I was in Israel, when I went back last week, so towards the end of December, to just offer volunteer services with my family, and also just felt like so right for me to be able to go back and to be there. I was able to offer a breathwork workshop at an event for wives and mothers of soldiers. And it was such a beautiful event. There were hairstylists and like a spa room. And then there was a therapy room. So there were different group sessions that women could join
Mhm.
with like different types of like somatic practices and energy and IFS, which is internal family systems, which is an amazing form of therapy and parts work, which we bring in a lot into our work. And so I offered a breathwork workshop there and was able to leave the women who joined with a few practices that they could bring forward with them. So I really wanted the emphasis to be on like not just, hey, let's help you feel calm in this moment, but hey, here are two practices that depending on how you're feeling, whether you're like
Mhm.
extremely anxious and overwhelmed, or if you're just feeling like so depleted and drained, you can feel into which practice is going to feel most supportive for you. Um, and later after the event, I got a message from a woman who was like, "Hey, were you at the Eshet Chayal event at Nefesh B'Nefesh? Like I thought I saw you, but I couldn't find you after. And I love your breathwork videos. And it really like I
Mm,
did your breathwork videos during the beginning of the war, and they really helped me. And I was just like, wow, how how cool is that? How powerful is that? That, I'm not like that was the intention, was to just be able to help even one person process, like move through what that is happening to us. Like, and so that was just a really profoundly, like, I'm so grateful in that moment to have heard from her and that it reached someone. And I'm now offering a session actually later this week over Zoom for wives and mothers of um, soldiers to actually lead them through like a more full breathwork experience. And hopefully we'll continue to be able to offer more of that. So even though I'm not physically there anymore right now, my intention is to really continue to be able to use this work to help not just here, but over there right now too.
yeah. Wow. There's so much duality in your story, right? That I'm like feeling and hearing through. It's the pain and the trauma of yourself and of others, just of like the immediate effects, right? That immediate shock or that like just the awful happenings. Then there's that like the pain of feeling responsible to like hold the whole nation on your shoulders. I'm sure you're not the only one that's feeling that. Like
Hmm.
that is its own unique thing, right? And then there's the love and connection and community that I hear and feel you speak into a lot. And then there's there's just like so many different faces of this, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it sounds like, and from talking to you and knowing you, like breathwork has been that tool that has helped you hold and move through and process those many different facets of this experience. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah. I'm so glad that you honed in on that, because that theme of duality was so present with me the entire time that I was there this past week.
Mm,
There you named it exactly. There is the pain and the sadness and the heaviness and the grief and the fear and the confusion and like the yearning for relatives to come back home. And
yeah.
then there's also the unity, which the country was very divided when October 7th happened. And God forbid not to ever say why or something, but the country was very divided. And we often see in history when there's division, it can lead to something like something bad happening. And so I don't at all want to insinuate that there's a reason for that. However, it definitely didn't help.
Yeah.
But right now, there is tremendous unity across the entire nation. There is so much pride. There are so many people who are showing tremendous amount of courage and bravery. And these are like your everyday people, like your everyday people that are working in tech companies and that are farmers and that are living in New York or in London or in Australia that flew back for service to defend their country. Like that is at the heart of the Jewish people, truly. Like, so yeah, that duality is so palpable. Like you
Mm,
really feel it on such a deep level while you are there. which is just a blessing to have been able to experience because it feels like you really feel it when you're there. It's in the air. It's so present. Um, and throughout the entire experience, I was so aware of my breath and my like on a somatic level, just really feeling how my physical body was feeling each day and how I was able to not even like I didn't even have time to do a full breathwork session for myself while I was there, except for one night. Um, one of our friends helped me in a session when I needed it and was really grateful for that. But the constant awareness of my breath to come back to and just being able to like breathe in and breathe out and feel that flow of my breath moving in and through me and being
Mm.
able to just constantly come back to this place of like, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. And especially when we were down south visiting and bearing witness to the massacre that occurred in Kfar Aza, which was one of the communities that was massacred. And there were we're less than a mile from the border. So you just hear the war going on in the background. You're hearing booms all day.
Mm.
And so having that place of like really being able to keep my nervous system in a place of like sorry, there was a fuzz. Um, a place of like coming back to okay, like I'm okay, I'm good. And constantly being able to reassure myself of that, even though like that wasn't for certain by any means. Um, being able to have those tools with me throughout the entire practice was just so not the entire trip was so supportive in knowing that like I have everything that I need inside of me to be able to go and
Mm.
see these atrocities. And of course, it's incredibly traumatic to witness and to actually see what took place. Um, but it's so important too because of wanting to be able to use this work to support those that lived it firsthand.
Yeah.
There is an importance as a facilitator to really get a some level of feel for what they went through on that day, which I will never come close to really understanding. But as an empath on an energetic level, there were definitely qualities where I was able to feel the heaviness of it, which for fellow empaths that are trained in this work and understand what I mean as I say that. And just knowing that there's so much more that I want to be able to pour into with this work. And really having it be at the forefront of the healing process in Israel. Um, and so there is like I'll be so honest that there's this part of me that so deeply wants to be there right now. Like so wants to be there and just being there only for a week, there's only so much that I could accomplish.
Yeah.
And but it was a really good experience to be able to connect with people that I will have these relationships to be able to nurture, to bring breath work and somatic healing to them when it's my time and like really just trusting that I will be there when I'm really meant to be there. And I believe that wholeheartedly. So yeah, it's really a blessing that I'm exposed to this work. And like I truly feel on such a deep level that I came into this work and I did the pause breathwork program all for this purpose of being able to bring this work to Israel and really to Jews around the world, because breath work is so vast and there are so many uses for it. And it's not always through this trauma informed lens and as a tool for self healing. And as we know, breath work is the most powerful self healing modality that exists. It really
Yeah.
is. So it's
Amen.
like, yeah, really. So being able to go through this program and then like right as I'm about to finish it, all of this happens and I'm like it's just it feels very aligned for me to be exactly where I am right now. And this mission is just so big on my heart and on my soul. And I'm just really focusing on staying present and
Hmm.
not like wanting to force it, because there is endless need for this work and for the PTSD and hopefully not getting to PTSD. Um, yeah. So
Yeah.
long answer, but
It's beautiful. And you just said the word that has been on my mind for this whole interview as I've been listening to you and just hearing you and your experience. The one word that I see shine through is that you're present.
mm,
You're present. And in my own experience, that's very, very vastly different. I'm not trying to compare experiences, but that really resonated with me in your story is that this breath work and you having done the work yourself has allowed you to be present in all of it. I think it's easy to just kind of check out, not just in this situation, but in life in general. It's easy to just check out like that trauma, just we can just like, oh, I just can't handle it, and you check out, and it's hard to feel,
yeah.
especially as empaths, right? Like it's so hard to feel and to go in and to really be there in that emotion. And I really see that shining through in your stories that you were able to be present in it. And I think that's
Mm,
really powerful.
thank you. It had a lot of intention, has a lot of intentionality behind it. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's such a blessing to have this work and to have the like to really embody it before having gone through this, because the breath work and somatic healing, like it doesn't mean that in the moment you're going to like just be okay and it's fine. It
Yeah. No.
means crying and screaming and having that visceral reaction, that anger, feeling all of the emotions, feeling everything that you're feeling, because they're valid, because these are
And they're
things that,
real.
yeah, they're real. Like these are real people that were the things that took place are things that will make you want to scream and yell and be angry. And then also to have the denial of there, like, of course, that's going to be the reaction. And so that's where there's so much, that's where so many get it wrong, that like, oh, don't feel that. Don't like be strong. Yes, of course, when you are in the midst of survival mode and you're hiding in your safe room and there are terrorists like rampaging through your community and you hear gunshots and Arabic, like you are in survival mode. Kick that up and, of course,
Yeah.
the natural reaction, don't feel in that moment,
Yeah.
right? If that's what's going to help you survive. And as we know, everyone responds to trauma so differently. And it's
Hmm.
based off of our previous experiences and our past ancestors' previous experiences that we carry. So there's no right or wrong way to respond to what one might be going through. And we also know that keeping it bottled up inside does more damage to us in the long run by not allowing ourselves to fully process and feel. And so every
Hmm.
timeline looks different. And so God forbid, I'm not here to say that this is the way that you have to heal and that you have to do it this way or that way. But when we allow ourselves to really to feel and sit with our emotions, despite how painful they might be, especially when I've gone through an extremely traumatic experience, we get to move so gently and slowly, like
Yeah.
0.00001% steps at a time. But slowly we get to open up that tolerance to be able to really live with the experiences that we went through versus keeping them stuck and stored within our body. Because God forbid we live through this experience for naught. Like
Yeah.
it's it's so heartbreaking when someone succumbs to their trauma, and who could blame them? Who could blame them?
Yeah.
There is no shame for that at all, because there are dark things that I have never experienced, and please God never will, that people on this planet have experienced. And so like, who am I to say, oh, like, feel that? I don't blame anyone who doesn't,
Mm.
anyone, and keeps it shut away. And I also will say that there are people who have been in the darkest of spaces that have slowly allowed themselves to process and feel and move through and like really integrate their trauma, whatever that is, and be able to use that to become larger than their experience it, not allowing it to define them and keeping them contracted, which again, I'm not here to say that one is right or wrong, because there's no blame that anyone who, but those who do choose to face them, there's so much bravery and courage in that, and you get to move as gently and slowly as you need to grasp that experience and to move through it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you're here for that.
yeah, yeah. I am. I have done a lot of that work myself, and it is incredibly challenging and painful and scary. And when there's so much uncertainty on the other side, and when you feel like you'll be all consumed, and when like the other side of it feels like, I don't know if I can handle what's there,
Yeah.
there's so much fear in that. However, it's the keeping it contained that I found in my experience, that is what is keeping us keep that kept me stuck, was not
Yeah.
fully feeling it and not fully going there. And it took a lot of, it took time. It took time. and being gentle in this process of titration of like, again, this slowly opening up that tolerance for what you can handle when going to those places that are deep in there that like we don't want to go to. And that's where breathwork is such a beautiful practice where somatic healing and breathwork meet too, to be able to bring you to these places in a safe, guided way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Hmm. I would love to know, one, what you believe about breath. Like, wide
mm,
open, what do you believe about breath? And two, I would just love to know like what your offering is, what you are inviting people into, how people can reach you, like what you are available right now to help other people through.
mm, such a beautiful question. Breath is the pathway to our soul. Um,
Mm,
my I named my breathwork business Neshama Breathwork. Neshama in Hebrew means soul, the divine soul, and Neshima in Hebrew means breath. So they're spelled the exact same way, but like the vowels underneath, the equivalent of
yeah.
vowels, I guess, in Hebrew, consonant. I forgot what they're called. Anyway, that is the only difference. And so breath to me is the pathway to connecting more deeply to my alignment with my soul's purpose, with what
Mm,
I am meant to be doing here on this earth, what we as human beings are capable of quieting out the noise and the voice of our conscious mind and really being able to work with the language of the body and the felt senses through the breath to really heal ourselves from the bottom up, to heal ourselves from the inside. It's the most magical tool that we all have within us. Like if we don't have our breath, we don't have life.
yeah.
So most of us just don't know how to leverage it and to tap into the wisdom of this gem that we have that we use every day unconsciously. And so bringing conscious awareness to our breath is one of the greatest gifts that
Mm,
a person can offer themselves. So that's what breath is to me.
amen to that.
Yeah.
Mm,
And right now, I am launching a group program for Jewish women for exactly this work, like that are really leaders looking to more deeply embody their soul's divine purpose, to finding that pathway to their soul through their breath and through somatic parts work.
mm,
So, like, really understanding the stuckness that has kept them where they are, like on a body level, the traumas, the emotions, the energies that are just living and stored in the body, learning how to really release and move through that in a really guided, safe, beautiful, fun,
mm,
expansive, connected way with like-minded Jewish women who are looking for that level of growth and emotional intimacy with themselves and other women, that a level of connection that most people don't experience in their lifetime, truly.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a 6 month container space that we're creating together. And it's just going to be a really intimate, beautiful group of women who are so wanting to be just embodied in this work and using their breath to and their body to guide their life in a
Mm.
whole new way. Um,
Yeah. Well,
so yeah.
that's what you said in the beginning, right? It's that pathway to the soul. Like if you're a Jewish woman and you were deeply affected by what's going on and you deeply resonate with Jessica's story and you deeply desire to find that soul's purpose of yours to like have an impact, if you want to embark on that pathway of the soul, this is for you.
Mm. Yeah, you're my concise
Yeah, I'm
one
here for
that
you.
can
Where can they find
yeah.
it? Is it on your
Mm.
website,
Yeah, my
Instagram?
website. So neshamabreathwork.com. So that's
Beautiful.
Neshama breathwork.com. You can also type in jessicaofer.com and it'll bring you
Beautiful.
there too. And I haven't shared it on my Instagram yet, but by the time this releases, it will have been. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Just DM me on Instagram or shoot me an
Yeah,
email. And yeah.
it's going to be
Mm.
amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And the last thing that I want to say actually is that I didn't even remember to mention. So this is a sweatshirt that I got when I was in
Mm,
Israel from the Nova Music Festival exhibit. That was a festival where there were 360 beautiful, young, vibrant souls that were massacred. Um, and I'll leave it at that to keep it cleaner.
yeah,
But this has the coordinates and it says, we will dance again. And so does this jog tag. And this says, bring them home now. And
mm,
that's for our hostages. And yeah, so I felt it was appropriate to wear that for this
yeah.
interview and got my Jewish star and my evil eye because I'm loud and proud.
I love it. So good. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being loud and proud. Can I just thank you for taking up space? Thank you for being you. The
Mm.
world needs more of that. The world needs more people being loud and proud.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the space to really process more because I'm still moving through and integrating everything that I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
And so just thanks for, yeah, really giving me a voice to be able to move through that myself and just be able to share with the world my experience. I have so much love for you and just everything that you're doing and for our
Mm,
relationship. It's incredibly special.
mm. Thank you. And you're welcome. And thank you.